welcome to session 2 of the endurance event. If you're coming from the Talk with Scott, really informative chat, and we are on to session number 2 of our last one for tonight with Jim Vance. He's part of the team at 80/20 Endurance, one of our partners, coach of Ben Kanute. Probably doesn't need that big of an introduction, but Olympian, 3-time national champion, fellow Chicagoan. So it's good to have you on the call. And Jim, I'll let you take it away from here. I think you're
awesome.
muted.
Yep.
There we go.
Thank you. There we are. All right. So I am just going to share my screen over here. Oh man. Window. There we are. Okay. And okay, I think that's pretty viewable right there. Fits right. Okay. So obviously the Ben and I have worked together a long time, and I'm one of the top guys in the sport in the world, not just American. And it's been quite the journey, and I swear we could tell a lot of stories, I'm sure, of different scenarios and things. So this is actually a presentation that I've kind of put together that just kind of summarizes some things, because I think there's so much we can learn. Athletes can learn, coaches can learn from the experiences and mistakes that we've made. Ben and I have made some mistakes, he'll tell you. We've also gotten a lot of things right, obviously. And, there's just been so much learning. So this is a great opportunity just to kind of share that, and I'm looking forward to it. So a little bit about myself. I was a former professional athlete in triathlon for a little while back in early 2000s, mid 2000s. As you can see there, probably the peak was Florida, Ironman Florida in 2006 for me, but 8:37, just to give you an idea on how far we've come in the sport. Ben beat that time by a little over an hour in Roth this year. So things have changed quite a bit. I also wrote Triathlon 2.0, which is all about using data to coach yourself, power meters, GPS for 70.3 and Ironman, based on your age, your gender, and your goals. A lot of great learning in there if you're into data and trying to learn. Run with Power, really just about the advent of running power meters, which has been a tool that Ben and I have used and really perfected pretty well with our approach. I did Triathlon Science with Joe Friel, was a co-editor, and Joe actually wrote the forwards to those other books, if you're familiar with Joe. So some great opportunities for you to learn and things. And I should tell you that Ben and I are planning a book this year. I'm working on that with the hopes to kind of come out as we kind of chase Kona this year. So that's the general plan so far. So a lot of cool things. I'm just going to share some amazing stats about Ben that I think are pretty impressive with what we've been able to do together. Just to kind of show like why I put this together, because as I really sat back and thought about this, 7 years, 7 full seasons together, 0 missed race starts, only 1 injury in our entire time together. One injury where he really had to take some time off. And that injury actually happened in the final race of the season, on the final day of the season. So really, he just went into an off season anyway. I think it was a tear of his groin, about, what was it, 25% or something like that, tore, Ben?
It was a partial tear of the iliopsoas. So that that tendon down there, like a really, really weird, obscure tendon it attaches right on the inside of your femur. So I think that's probably one of the only triathletes to have ever torn that. That's probably another amazing stat right there. Yeah, it was probably only like a 25%. It wasn't all the way through, thankfully, but yeah, that was the weirdest and probably most painful part of a triathlon that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, well, and it was a very odd, different type of race. It was Super League in Mallorca, where I think you had to do swim, bike, run, swim, bike, run, swim, bike, run, and you were running through the sand like for the final time to enter the water, or coming out of the sand or something, I think.
I was on the last section of the triathlon, I think we did it 2 times through, maybe 3, but I only had 1 more time through, and running into the sand and diving, it felt weird, and kicking in the water, I had hip flexor pain. and I just thought I was like fatigued and tired, but then I couldn't run because we had a little mini run through the sand. And so I flopped back in the water, finished out my swim, and then I couldn't make it up the stairs, and there were super steep bike hills plus super steep run hills that we had to go up. So I just couldn't get myself through that one. So just definitely weird, but the next day was a little bit better, if not stiff. And it just kind of one of those things we had to let heal on our own, and didn't really have to. There was definitely no surgery or anything like that, so that was good.
Yeah, so really when you think about it, I start with that because it's an unheard of statistic at this level. Really, 0 missed race starts. Whenever, Ben, you came and started with hey, this is the season, here's our race schedule, we've made it to every start line. And that's pretty amazing, especially at a level where so many athletes can't go 7 months without an injury. So at that level, so that's pretty incredible. Obviously, 2 silver medals at the 70.3 World Championships, 2017 and 2022. An American record for the Ironman distance. That's a 7:37:01. I could have put that there. He actually did his first Ironman ever, was Ironman Arizona, a couple weeks after he finished his silver at the 70.3 Worlds, and was the 5th fastest debut of all time at 7:52, I think, something. And that's Ben's slowest Ironman, 7 hours and 52 seconds. So that's kind of crazy. In our time together, we also have never finished off the podium for the USA in a mixed relay at a world championship level event, which was quite a number of events. So that's quite the range, because you're talking about a 20-minute race to a 3-hour and 40-minute race, or 3-hour 30-minute race. So that range is pretty incredible. You are the only athlete from my research that has a top 10 in each of the last 7 years at the 70.3 World Championships.
Well, maybe we just won't count Finland then, because I definitely wasn't top 10 this past year.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, that's right. Okay, so
we'll forget about Finland.
6 years. It was 6 years. Sorry, 6 years.
Yeah,
I think the truth is I forgot about Finland.
Yeah,
for sure.
So it's a forgettable. Sorry. It was a forgettable month, honestly.
Yeah, it was. But that's part of the lessons here. I think that's what's great. We've had both successes and everything else, and probably an amazing stat that people may not believe, but you've dropped 8 minutes in your 70.3 half marathon. That's about 34 seconds per mile by my calculations. So that's pretty significant when you think about how much faster that is. Especially, it's not like your run only improved and your bike stayed the same and your swim stayed the same. It's like, no, the bikes have gotten harder. the racing and the race dynamics have gotten harder, and we've still been able to do that.
You can, the more fun fact is you could probably go to that because Puerto Rico was our first 70.3. So there was some heat. You could probably, it helped in our favor, but I think I rode more watts in Roth and probably almost in Arizona over the entire bike than I did in Puerto Rico 70.3. And I was faster if I was running like a 120 or 118 or something like that off the bike, like 118-ish. I was pretty much the same pace in my marathon in Roth that I was
That's right.
at that 70.3 that I, when I first started.
What did we cross the half marathon in at Roth?
We were actually faster. I was on pace for like a 232, 233, because it's pretty flat at the beginning. Yeah, right around there.
God,
so, but that second half marathon is really hard at Roth. The last few miles at Roth.
It's brutal. Yes. So anyway, this kind of gives you an idea, and I think it's just the truth here. You even forget after 7 years together some of the stuff we've done and accomplished. So I just I think most out of this, what we want to just do is, by the end, I think the goal is Ben can kind of tell you what we've learned is most important for him. What we've learned that we're good at, because that's one of the things that I think we've learned through this process is let's stick with what we're good at. When we've kind of strayed away from what we're good at, we've found that doesn't really pay off very well for us. And then, as an athlete, I think we all want to know, can we get better? How can we do that? Even Ben still is asking that today. How can I get better? How, he knows he has to. And so we can talk about those things. Ben, why don't you just kind of share a little bit here? It doesn't have to be very
Yeah.
long. We'll go through each season, but just kind
I'll
of
give the spark
before
notes.
we started working together.
Yeah,
What's
so
that?
before I'll try and give the Spark Notes version, the real condensed, but I've been pretty much a lifelong. I was talking about somebody actually with my triathlon age, and I'm probably about 25 years old ish. I did my first one when I was about 8 or 9 years old, just a local kids try, relative, pretty short race overall, but have been in and around triathlon my entire life with my dad starting it up first in our family and eventually the whole family joining in. And pretty soon after that first one, a few years after, there was a kids triathlon team that was started by some local parents with the idea of doing the same thing that the club swim team system does, which is helping kids and athletes get to the Olympic level and kind of have that pipeline. And the Olympics were relatively new in triathlon at that point. And we were very draft legal, Olympic focused, kind of from that 2007 ish on was about the age that, or even 2005, I'd say was my first national championships for youth elite. And we just found success, I think, because we had this weird hotbed of triathlon in this western suburb of Chicago where a number of professional triathletes eventually came from out of that team. But we were very specialized pretty early on, I would say. And it gave me the opportunity to travel around the world, see what it took to be competitive at a world level after qualifying for a couple of junior world teams, and had some youth and junior elite national titles. And it led me picking the school that I went to, University of Arizona, because I knew I wanted to still pursue triathlon, see if I could take it to the next level. And while I was in school, I qualified for my elite card, and USAT gave me the opportunity to race overseas and kind of see what it took to race at an elite level in Europe for about 4 weeks, and got exposed to everything from super sprint up to the Olympic distance racing. And from there, that just set my mind on graduating school a year early, having that time to qualify for the Olympic team, which I guess kind of long story short there is I did. And found that I had some really good training with my former coach and coaches. At the end of that year, I just knew that something was kind of missing, and something was telling me that I needed some sort of change because I was training out of my mind. But I think in that year or two period between graduating and then qualifying for the Olympics, in that qualification period, really it was the final trials race that I probably had my best race of all of 2016. And then my Olympics was basically, 2/3 of the way really, really good. And then kind of just survival to the finish. So at the end of the year is when Jim and I would pick up and we sat down and talked, because I was looking at a bunch of different coaches. And one of my former coaches actually, he was like, I'm not the guy for you, but I think Jim is, and you should talk to him. And so I did, and was able to, connect on a lot of different things, and felt like we were a good fit. And from there, well, I could say the rest is history, but we're going to go through all the history. So.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I remember that Kona meeting. I believe Ben said to me, Jim, I want to win the 70.3 World Championships, and I want to win an Olympic medal in the mixed relay in Tokyo. And I remember thinking, why don't we just run the 100 meters and the marathon at the track and field World Championships? So it was quite the challenge. But I had to come up with a strategy, and the core of my approach was basically that I think I basically had to get you to believe that you were good enough to be able to do all that. And so I structured training in a way that I just felt like as long as we kept showing progress, you would eventually get there. And sure enough, that's about how it worked out. So it's been great to see, but that all come together. But wow, what a unique challenge and unique background you had. It was really exciting. 2017, obviously, that was kind of our first full season together with Puerto Rico, that 70.3, where you said you ran 120 off the bike. And then by the time we get to Roth, 6 years later, you're running 116 through the half of a full marathon off the bike. So quite the change. We had a mixed relay world championship silver medal. And I think you had the fastest split at the mixed relay world championships that year, or one of the fastest, one of the top 2 or 3. And then obviously we finished it with the silver medal at Chattanooga. So why don't you just feel free to share your thoughts and any lessons learned that year, Ben, that first season together?
Yeah, I think this was kind of that mixture of your whole thing about this year and when we started working together was just incorporating rest. Because in my previous coach, I would go through, we would do all this training, keep building. And you can talk to some of the guys who were around me before the Olympics, and in particular, like one of the coaches, and he's told, kind of some other people just what he saw firsthand. Like I was doing crazy stuff at altitude and just like really hammering myself, but never really gave myself the opportunity to fully taper and rest into a race. And so I think in the training, you were able to build me into kind of a middle distance athlete, where I remember, 4 by 30 minutes on the bike was our big goal for what we wanted to hit. And you were able to fractionalize the workouts to get me confident to be able to go there, and never really gave me any goal watts. It was all just, ride all this workout so that you're, hitting solid numbers throughout and you're not blowing yourself up 45 minutes into an hour and a half of intervals. And I think those two things of being able to work through progressions and then also having the adequate rest to, get all that work absorbed were kind of the biggest takeaways. And from there, it was just, there was no real limits on, what can I do? Maybe aside from that first Puerto Rico race where you're like, hey, Andy Potts is a good guy to follow. You should follow Andy Potts in Puerto Rico. And that worked out fairly well. But then it was kind of like, just let yourself go. Like you've done all the training, and that Puerto Rico race built into St. George, which was a huge confidence booster with how deep that race was. Obviously, that Escape from Alcatraz win, like the crazy thing about that was they canceled the swim. So there was no swim for me to use in that race. And I had to win it on the bike and the run with, the likes of like Cam Dye, who was the Uber biker at the time. And we had Greg Billington or Joe Malloy, like some of those guys who were there, Jason West, all, trying to win that race without the swim. And then the 70.3 world champs, like when I look back at that race, that was the perfect timing of, we did such specific training where I could ride that first 10-minute, 15-minute hill, like at 380 to 400 watts. Like I capped myself at 400 watts, where I could separate myself. And I was new enough where everybody thought I would walk the run, almost like a Laidlow situation where he went off the front and everybody thought he would walk. I just took advantage of the race dynamics and stuff and was able to kind of separate myself there and, set myself up for kind of almost a dream scenario. And that was the first time in a long time where I felt like I had one of those races where like everything pretty much clicked. Like there was nothing else that I could have done. And that was like, aside from just being a faster runner on the day, and we just didn't have enough time to really accomplish that. But I think I remember sitting down with you at the end of that season and going, like, I ran like a 116 on that course, which was pretty challenging and hilly. And that was faster than what I ran in Puerto Rico. And I think even in St. George and stuff. And so that was, I think, a huge takeaway. And actually, I even think it was a 114 or so, because Gomez outran me by like 5 minutes and he ran like a 109 or a 110. So I was even a bit faster. So that's where, there's just that steady progression of, why can't I be better in the next race?
Yeah. Well, in St. George, I think Puerto Rico, you got third. Andy Potts, I think, was second. Taylor Reed of Canada happened to kind of storm back through and beat you guys, as I recall. And yeah, we had said, let's just follow Andy since he was the most experienced and it was your first one. And then at St. George, it was Alistair Brownlee's debut 70.3 there, as I recall, too. And he won. And I think second was Lionel. Am I right on that? And third,
I think so. Cause what the fact, like one of the stats was like, it took all like either Olympic or world championship medalists. Cause Tim Don was fourth. It was Alistair Brownlee, and I'm forgetting the other two guys at the moment, but it was, I think it might've been Lionel and like Sebastian Kienle was there too. I think.
Kienle, yep.
Yeah.
And there were it was a hell of a field. And yeah, you got fifth and beat like a number of the guys. And that's really when I think at that point in time, that was early May. And it was after that you said, Jim, I really want to break the tape. I want to win Alcatraz. And I could just see this confidence in you grow. And then you won Alcatraz, which I just knew you were going to win. I saw it in you. You were so confident. And I just got on the plane, went there. I got to be there to see him win this. And sure enough, you won. And then obviously the mixed relay, that success that you had in July. So we're basically going like March, May, June, July. And then we just went home and got really, focused on Chattanooga, and you showed up in Chattanooga and let it rip. And it was quite the year. So it was a heck of a year. Everything, we were able to take each success and just build on it. And it really did work. But I think one of the problems is, or one of the takeaways of this probably would be that I think we set expectations right in Puerto Rico. That first one, we're like, hey, we're here to learn. We're just going to go off the best guys. We're gonna just mix it up and use this. And then, but by the time we got to St. George, it's like, okay, now we're competing against bigger guys. It's not just learning. Now we got to take some risk. And then, but again, the progression. So yeah, I think that's a big one. Obviously, in 2018, then come back, you defend your title at Alcatraz. You get your first 70.3 win ever, which was Texas 70.3, and I think you went 114 there off the bike. You won the New York City Triathlon. You finished fourth at what people mostly regard as the greatest 70.3 race in history, where Jan Frodeno won. Second place was Alistair Brownlee. Third place was Javier Gomez. Fourth place was Ben Kanute. Fifth place was Peter Heimrich, I believe. So, who all well-known names now. And ironically, Ben, like you had said, that 2017 run, if Ben has his 2018 run in the 2017 race, he's world champion. So we were just kind of 1 year behind a little bit, but quite the thing. Any big takeaways from you that year, Ben, that you remember?
Yeah, I think this was a year of like, we copied almost like a similar plan to 2017, and we did a lot of the same things on the bike. And I think I had okay, let's just match what we did there. But this was a huge year, I think, of, running faster off of that. And I think this might've been one of the first times where we really went into and started pushing the run even more, because we were relatively conservative with the run coming off of short course racing and how are we going to, progress all of it. And with some of these, races, the world champs in 2017, I think we put more focus into that, and there was more confidence from it as well. And that's where I think, I ran 112 at that world champs, and our whole goal too, it was, it was always break up the race as much as you could at the beginning, and then wait for other people to make mistakes on the run and just run your race. And I think that was the race where I probably ran like my race, but a little bit more aggressive. I ran with Sam Appleton for a lot of it, and the other guys did break and have mistakes. Javier Gomez walked and still ran a 67-minute half marathon. So there's only so much we can do, but it was a good year to like relearn like winning and what it takes to win at the distance overall, especially at like a Texas and still, I mean, 17 all the way through 20, we were trying to balance the short course racing as well. So that's just the other side that we aren't maybe seeing as much, where we're trying to balance qualification and getting into some of these short course races and taking these periodized times, where 17 was maybe more middle distance focused. And now 2018, we're making that decision of, okay, we're going to split this a little bit more and take certain times of the year to win a 70.3 and qualify for 70.3 worlds. But also in the summer, we're going to race WTCS races and make sure that we're, trying to go through that Olympic qualification.
Mm-hmm. By the way, you have your daughter about to tip over that tree behind you. um, that would add an element to the show. Yes, no, it was great, and I believe, Ben, 2018 was the first time we actually decided to go and get on the track and really work on getting your 1500 mile speed. What did we run
Yeah.
for the 1500? 350.
We
350
were
something.
we were like mid 350s or low. The mile converted, I remember, was always right in, and this might have been, I might be blending in 2019 as well, but I believe we got down to about like a 410 to 415 ish mile conversion. So I don't know exactly what that is for the 1500. Yeah, we got pretty quick on the track for, at least, I mean, for me at that time.
Oh yeah, no, that was great. So yeah, and I think you're right. I think it was somewhere in that 410 to 415. I think it was like 356 or something for the 1500, which puts it at about like 414, right around there. So then we get to 2019, and so by now it's our third season together. And as I was going through this, I was like, man, what a year that was. You obviously won your third Alcatraz in a row. But even before that, we kind of went on a tear to start the year. And I was surprised because, man, you just really responded, and you won three races in 22 days. The first one was Oceanside 70.3 on a Saturday. 8 days later, you won a Barbados ITU Sprint Cup draft legal. So you go from a non-draft half Ironman to a super, basically a sprint draft legal in a foreign country, to St. Anthony's, which is an Olympic distance non-draft. So you even got to take different bikes with you on this trip, and you win all three in 22 days. And that really just kind of set up. Next thing I know, we get this call from USA Triathlon that they want to send you to Chengdu, China, to do this Super Sprint World Cup. And you basically got a week to get your things ready and get on the plane. And that's kind of what we went through. And you ended up with a silver medal there in a great sprint finish. You can see it there in the photo. He and Alexis Lepage of Canada. There's your Oceanside 70.3 win that year, I think in 2018, that you won. We had a top 7 at a WTCS Edmonton, which you and only, I think, a couple other Americans have ever done, or maybe a handful now have. And then we got a bronze at the mixed relay in Tokyo test event, and the 70.3 worlds, although you finished 10th, you were third coming off the bike, and probably one of the only guys, third or fourth, I think, one of the only guys that really had a chance to win. I think you were fourth, and you were right there with like Blumenfeld or something. Maybe you were ahead of Blumenfeld coming in. I can't remember.
Yeah, this is the year, I think, where we got a lot of things right, but we got a couple things wrong when we looked back at it, because it's like we put up the successes on here, but what I remember too is, like, yeah, we came out super strong and we raced super well and we had trained well for all of those, but the planning was hard to do with trying to qualify for the Olympics, because I wanted to go for the mixed relay, and that's a discretionary spot. There's no auto qualifying, and I'm not chasing individual points. So I'm basically at the mercy of USAT to give me a slot at a race to sub in. And Chengdu was the opportunity. And going into it, like, that was a prelim final. I almost didn't qualify for the finals and even have a shot to sprint for that, because I literally got smoked on the 5K run that day before, because we were training literally for, the middle distance. That St. Anthony's was kind of just a toss in between to keep the races going. And that was the closest thing I had to a 5K basically in all of this. So I finally got to show my strength because of the mixed relay. And I think that, the more days in a row I race, the better I do against my competition. I just kind of stay steady, and everybody else, might start a little higher, but then starts to come down. So I think that kind of played to my favor in Chengdu. But then we tried to go to the Challenge Championship in Samarin, and we totally missed that one, because that's where we learned specific demands need to be met for like the middle distance racing for sure, because we spent all this time in 17 and 18 making sure we were prepared for specific 70.3s. And like this year in Oceanside, but when we tried to just throw one in, like my bike wasn't there. And then running off the bike wasn't quite there. So, and when we went back to look, we were like, oh, well, we prepared you for Alcatraz, not the Challenge Championship. And then I come back a week later after the Challenge Championship and win Alcatraz. And then I see this, like we go on a good tear in the summer, like that 7th at Edmonton was probably my best WTCS finish, I think. And there are like a handful of guys definitely who have been in and around that. And some guys like Matt and Morgan, probably, you know, up there, specifically Morgan a couple times. But yeah, that was, it was a good summer because we really developed the run speed. But I think, again, we just underestimated the demands of 70.3 worlds of the bike because that was in Nice. It was a super hard climb and I felt good early on and I was fit, but probably maybe if we look back and we were real critical, we'd say probably more volume and some more strength added in just because of the toll of the climbs overall. And then still having to ride down the mountain and time trial by myself, then all the way in, it just left me, I think, gassed for that half marathon where you're right. I was 3rd or 4th off the bike because Alistair and Rudy were off the front with Gustav. And then I came off right with Christian Blumenfeld. And I think he ended up running himself up there quite a bit. But yeah, it was just, I didn't have the run legs overall. And so it was a success in the fact that, you know, I faded to 10th, which is still, you know, solid a top 10. But I mean, after our first 2 world championships, we were really gunning and felt like we should, you know, be up there competing for one of the medals. So I think that was just one of those where we sat down, we're like, we had a decent prep, but that, what was it? Edmonton almost fell into like having to recover from that and do the Tokyo test event, cut into all of our prep for Nice, which is what affected our overall result there. So this is where I think when we look back, it was the year that we tried to maybe do a little bit too much and we had a lot of success, but then kind of underperformed in a couple of those other races.
Well, and I think this is when we really started to see, like you say, the value of those devoting time to specifically prep and setting aside the time to say, no, we have to have this type of base work and do this much work if we're going to go to a major 70.3. And really focus, because we started the year that Oceanside, Barbados, St. Anthony's, because those were your first races. We had all the off season of prep, and then we came out and we rode that fitness all the way through to May with Chengdu. But then, like you said, a couple weeks, I think we tried to do a little money grab, go to the Challenge Championship, and I think afterwards you said, Jim, every time we do this, we just do a money grab like this, it doesn't work out. And so that was a great lesson. And then, I think at Nice, you were strong, just not quite there. And then I think we did Bahrain later, and that did not go well. And I think that's when we kind of came to the reality of like,
I rarely race well in December when I'm just tacking it on at the end. That was I had to go race there from like a sponsor standpoint. But yeah, it's really hard to race a world champs. And then like, I think for me, just with family stuff and racing through the holidays, unless you really take a period of time off, which, you know, once we get to 2023, I think we can talk about some of the things we did right in building there. But yeah, it's really hard to race in December when you have Thanksgiving. We have so many birthdays now in December too, that it's just insane on top of Christmas and stuff. So it gets difficult.
Yeah. And just true to what you said, I think we just got greedy. We were trying to do too much, too many ranges
on the schedule. When we go back and look, like it was a ton, and it's some of it's super sprint, but yeah, it was like 15 to 20. That was my peak race year, I think, but after being in short course for a while. And we did everything from super sprint to half Ironman. And there was probably about 15 races.
Yeah, it was crazy. When people are like, can you believe these Norwegians and what they're doing? I've never seen that before. I'm like, I have. His name's Ben Kanute. So 2020, obviously there's some major life changes. Just to give you guys an idea, Ben, during a pandemic, got married, bought his first house, and had his first child, all during a pandemic. So 4 things that a lot of people would never experience in their life, he did in 1 year, in 1 season, while trying to be a pro. It was go ahead. No,
I was going to say, this is the year of kind of hurry up and wait, because this was supposed to be the Olympic year. So I'd always planned on getting married with my wife in January, the very beginning of January, and then honeymooning, coming back, and then hitting the race season full stride to show fitness and at this point in time, I was probably one of the top 3 or 4 picks for the mixed relay, and had performed in my mind and Jim's mind. Maybe like some guys were injured. We had a lot going for us to be selected. So it was kind of solidifying that. And so we got fit pretty quick, but then when COVID hit, we kept getting told like another month. And so we just tried to maintain, and it took us until May, I think, where we're like, screw it. We're starting over. We'll focus on something different. And that's where I decided to take, where a lot of people managed the pandemic by doing these huge training days and like stacking up more training than they've ever done before. I managed it by, taking a break from the sport almost a little bit, and, doing as much stuff family wise as possible. And, shortly after, like a couple months after our wedding, actually, we got a dog first. We found a dog and got a puppy. And then we found out we were pregnant. And then, we went through the whole of like moving out of a condo into a house in the heat of the Phoenix, one of the hottest summers on record, one of the most 120 degree days like that we've ever had. So it was a lot of that. And I think after the past few years too, we did some workouts that were in the heat too. And it's just hard to manage heat management, prepping for having your first kid, like all of this other stuff. So there were extra stressors in my life besides triathlon that we took into account, but it was just a lot less. And so when we go, there were a couple other like kind of BC level races to come into it. But I think the biggest takeaway here was we might have trained really well and improved, but it didn't translate at all to the races. And I hadn't done enough specific prep or just even base in general to be ready for a race like the Daytona, PTO championships, where I think most of the guys who showed up there were doing, some of them I think even did a 40-hour training week at least once, because they didn't know what else to do because there was no competition. And I had taken a completely different approach. And that was just a reminder, because we'd always prepped so well. But between, even getting married and stuff, like there was no real base there. We just kind of trained really well and really quality wise, but didn't have that specific stuff that we really needed to be competitive on, a world championship level.
Yeah. And I remember in May, when we realized that we weren't going to be racing for a while, we had a phone call, and I had said to you, this is our best chance ever to just focus on your running, where we don't have to worry about trying to carry fitness into races, because there are no races. We can just focus on your run and really take the next step. And so we dove in even further with Bobby McGee, brought him onto our staff, and really just kind of took off from there. And then obviously the next season, after that, we kind of made another change at Bobby's recommendation to have you start working with Matt Pendola, Pendola Project and strength training approach, which as I've kind of told Matt, I feel like we're legally cheating sometimes because it's so impressive what his things have done in terms of just performance enhancement for you and things. It's been so wonderful to just see. We obviously were trying for the Olympic team. The U.S. lost 1 spot, which really hurt our opportunity to make it. And even then, I think probably Matt McElroy was probably the most deserving guy of the 3rd spot, considering the year he was having coming off of. But we did win the 4th Alcatraz, which was amazing. Got back to 70.3 worlds with a 6th place. And then you had that 3rd at the Collins Cup in kind of the prep for the worlds that I think started to realize, hey, we're starting to get back. And it felt like Matt's changes were really starting to take effect maybe kind of near the end of the year. I remember you even with St. George, the course was really downhill. And so you worked on a lot on some eccentric work with Matt, and that helped. And you came out of that feeling really good. So just some insights you have from that season?
Yeah, 2021, it was kind of I would say the biggest thing is we started working with Matt like late 2020, and we didn't even do, and this is where I always call his stuff like strength and mobility. And he's here, he's in the background, so I'm not gonna
slide him in.
There's no pressure, there's no gun being held to my head, but we've been talking while he's here, and I'm like, it's so funny because you're like, you have to call yourself strength because I guess that's technically what you do, but it's like not strength at all. It's like efficiency training, where he's just helping me maintain efficiency throughout. And we're increasing bike power and stuff now as well. But the whole beginning was just helping me hold the run form that Bobby was teaching me better, and helping me move and be able to just hold that run form, move correctly while I was running, almost like better than Bobby could, just because Bobby knew what he wanted me to do. But Matt took what Bobby wanted me to do and was like, this is what is impairing you, like what your scap isn't moving, or your hips are impinged, or just whatever it was that we had. And 6 weeks after, we move on, we keep progressing the protocol, and then where we had a terrible race at the St. George 70.3, the North American champs, which was a number of things, but couldn't figure it out. I think it was also, we were trying to do Olympics. There was a lot of stuff. It was another one of those like Chengdu, where Chengdu into Samarin, where we're like, well, we didn't get to specifically prep for this. Like, we made that same mistake where different circumstances, different reasons, we didn't get greedy. We just, we didn't prep in the way we wanted to. But also I came back and got my bike fit, and my bike fitter's like, you're falling off your saddle because of all of that thoracic work that you just did with your strength coach, Matt. Like, you can get more aero even. Like, you got crunched up. Now you're like longer up top. So my bike fit changed completely for the better. And we actually started all of this to help with my run form, which was improving, which we saw. But the biggest change right away was the bike fit. So that was pretty crazy. And I think then it was, we were always kind of clawing our way back this year. Having my daughter, just figuring out the sleep, the new schedules, we did a good job. My wife took on a lot. I still performed well. Collins Cup was the peak. Like, I really hit my stride there and loved that race. But I think, I got COVID there. I didn't feel sick,
right.
but
that's right. And you got stuck in the country there.
I was stuck in the country for almost 2 weeks. They weren't going to let us leave at all. Like,
you were locked in a room.
Yeah, they put us upstairs at the very top level of the hotel, and the protocol was, at least 2 full weeks. It might have even been more, and then you have to retest. And I was like, I have a wife and a kid at home. Like, I barely on the register, like I barely was over the threshold for, like, if the threshold was like 39, I was like a 42 or a 39, and the threshold was 40, or I was like just over it. And so the PTO, because they hosted that race, was really working with the government. They got us out of the country. But then I basically came home, did about a week or so in the heat before St. George, and then went up to St. George, and then we raced. And I remember telling you, I'm like, I didn't feel bad during the race, but I just didn't feel good. Like, there wasn't that same world champ prep because of the Collins Cup, because of all this other stuff, where it was just blah. And I was like, that was great, but like, we can do better. We're going to come back next year. We know what the course is, or will similarly be, because it ended up getting changed. But like, we need to prep specifically for this. This is our shot. And, that's where I think we went back to some specific prep, and we didn't try and race, I don't think, super late this year, from what I remember. But overall, I think we probably came back into it a little bit stronger, and we're able to prep better for 2022.
Oh, for sure. Oh, that's definite. And then obviously 2022, I wrote when I first started working on it, I thought that was the most challenging and rewarding year at the same time. We started off, we had things kind of went well with Oceanside to start. And then I felt like things were going really well, but I just kind of got you into this gray area. I think we overdid it. And then we mostly spent the summer just trying to rebound. And I remember at one point after Alcatraz was so disappointed, you were like, something's not right, Jim. And I think you had some infection, like a sinus infection. And
Yeah.
so it took us a while. We just had to push the reset button and restart.
Yeah.
And then it was crazy how every race you did, it wasn't necessarily very good, but it just kept getting better. And then boom, right before St. George, you did the camp, and man, everything just kind of came together. And so go ahead, share.
This is the culmination. I mean, even before, even before Alcatraz, I think even my results at the beginning of the year were kind of blah. Like if we go back to 2021, I came out and I was running some of the best I ever had. Like that Miami race in 2021, I closed faster than most people, except for like Jan and Lionel, maybe. Came from like fifth all the way to third by the end, which again was like, a testament to like the strength that Matt was doing, the run form that Bobby had. Like it was all coming together on the run. And then 2022, I think we started off fine, like, Oceanside and stuff. I don't,
Fifth.
Fifth, like it was just kind of, again, it was a bit blah, but we were building. But then it was because we went to like a rest on demand type training where we figured out that when we do rest on demand with me, when I feel like I need rest, I'm about a day or two too late and already starting to dig myself into a hole. And so that we just had to go back, like you said, to what worked. And for us, planned rest worked. Like work, then absorb the work, then work again. And yeah, the sickness and everything, that was just, I think, again, figuring out family stuff. We had a sickness run through. Then we tried to race, thought it was just a head cold. Ended up being a sinus infection that took forever, took a lot of training out. So I spent that whole summer rebuilding. Got a new mental coach as well, which helped kind of work through, like that was after Texas, which was, again, I felt like we were right on the verge of doing something great in Texas. And it was just awful. Like it wasn't good at all. And we just had to be patient. The Collins Cup was kind of that final prep, I believe. And then, it was just that culmination of, I think, letting go and just letting the fitness talk. We had a great prep going in, took it focused, and just really, had no expectations on what I needed to do, but just let myself race. And that was, I think, by the end, between, St. George and Ironman Arizona, that was probably the most, rewarding finish to a year that I've had.
You were ready. I could just see it. Like when Ben's ready, there's this calmness to him. And it's like he doesn't worry about things. It's like, not that you're high stress by any means, but it's like you're always this low stress, easy going. Nothing can derail you. It's it's really cool to see when you're fit and ready. And then obviously 2023 was another rewarding and challenging year. We had some really good starts, decent start. Obviously Roth was the peak. We kind of recovered through the summer. What we learned from that was really your first Ironman in the middle of a year. So it was new for me to have to recover. And then we just had a lot of circumstances with record heat again in Phoenix through the summer. The idea to stay there wasn't maybe the best, but again, you have family and this is part of the balance, right? So go ahead and just chat briefly, and then we can maybe get into some Q&A here.
Yeah, we carried some good momentum through Oceanside, Ibiza, Roth, took specific prep for Roth. That was it ended up being our A race. And when we pick an A race and we focus on it, we do really well. And the rest of the racing was almost like an afterthought. And we thought too, we could carry the volume from the Ironman block all the way through to that August racing. But what we didn't consider was the 2-week taper leading into the race, the week or two of trying to work our way back. So we've kind of had quite a bit of time without the volume. And like you said, there were so many different stressors of like being here in the heat, trying to get in high intensity training and just balancing that all. And you said, when I'm ready and I'm fit. I kind of know when I'm ready and when I'm not. And it's almost like I could tell going into August, like I had my best part of the races. Like some of them were good, some parts were bad, but it was, again, just like not recovered enough, kind of constantly sick. And it was a reverse of the previous year where I had to build back to the world champs and I had time to. This is where after we peaked, I couldn't really get back into it. And that's where I think what I learned was we reset early in 2023 after that August racing, and we progressively built where my December race in Indian Wells was not bad. It had good numbers, but we progressively built through that. And now at this point in the year, I think we're some of the fittest that I've ever been in February, and looking, we haven't pulled out all the tricks yet. So we have a lot more that we can improve on.
For sure. And then 2024, our big focus is Kona. And I think, one of the big things we've learned is, again, like Ben says, when we pick a race and we devote the time to prep for it, we do very well. And we've made sure that the calendar supports really coming into Kona fit. And so we are really excited. Ben has decided to focus on the new T100 series with PTO, and then Kona. So that's really that I'm excited about this year. I feel like, man, we've got everything kind of well established. We're not going to do another Ironman. He's one of the few guys in the world that didn't have to do one to try to qualify for this, because he got his at Arizona back in 2022. So we're really stoked. And Ben, just a few words maybe about this year that you're excited for.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's going to be awesome. I think my mentality too is like, we don't want to be trying to focus on what people did in Kona 2 years ago. Like, we want to set the bar high and we want to change the sport. And to do that, that's where we're approaching, and where we see, where we're at with the workouts, but we have, quite a bit of ways to go if we're going to do that. I think, I haven't been shy about it. I think it's going to take a 7:30 or potentially under 7:30 to win Kona this year, which is, well under the record, and not only one of the fastest times in Kona, but the fastest times ever for the Ironman. So the sport's only getting faster. It's a super exciting time, and I'm excited to just see, in a couple weeks time where I stack up how our training's been going. And that's always the real test. Is training's great, but like the videos, like, we're talking about practice, we got to go out and actually race and do it.
That's right. I saw that response to the Magnus Ditlev video, his crazy video talking about practice. That was great. So lessons learned. And Hannah, how are we doing on time?
I mean, we've got 3 minutes here and people have some questions, but I feel like
if you want to start with those, start with some questions.
Feeds into what folks are asking, but okay. How about you touch on these first? These are nice.
Sure. Sounds good. So I'll just answer this real quick. What I've learned that's most important, with Ben, I've really done a lot to reduce injury risk. I think that's one of the reasons we've stayed healthy. That's allowed us to be consistent. I've reduced load. I've looked for ways to reduce that risk, like with the run walk. He's always been very coachable, open to these things, tried it so that we could see what worked and what didn't, rather than changing things on the fly all the time. He's been flexible. He's really good at just focusing and preparing for a race, and showing up ready to execute. He doesn't get these emotional volatilities. He executes at a level like I've never seen from most athletes. So and can he get better? Oh, we continue to get better. We're getting better now, and Matt Pandola continues to find little ways that just makes the work we do that much more effective as well. So Ben, any key lessons you want to share?
I think it just comes down to remembering what we've done in the past. Like each one of those years, we learned something about structuring races, what we needed to, go in and out of races. And it feels like we can take all of that. It's kind of appropriate that we're going through it right now, because I do feel like we're starting a new chapter in a book, and just basically focus on, what has worked for us in the past, that basic structure, and then making very minor tweaks, not doing anything that's super drastic and rewriting the whole book, but just, focusing on those key principles, like our main training sequence that we do of focusing on volume and intensity at kind of separate parts, growing that and just adding on to that rather than, really changing it up, and making sure that we don't, get too ahead of ourselves or too cocky or anything like that, and just keep working on improving ourselves. And I think that'll take care of it all versus everybody else, because we have a pretty good idea of what we've done in the past and where we can improve.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah, if you guys do have a few minutes to answer some questions, we'll take a few. We have a good list, but we'll pick a few from there if that's okay.
Sure.
Cool. Also, I just wanted to point out one thing that I loved about hearing about your relationship is, Ben, when you would answer about how you performed, you'd always say we ran a 1:16 or whatever. And I love that. You have a very nice relationship.
Well,
he's got a whole team.
I think
he's got a whole team.
It's like raising a kid, right? It takes a village. Like the only difference is you can choose your team. And I feel like that's one of the things that I've really done throughout the past 7 years is, well, one, Jim is open to having other people on the team, which is not always the case with certain coaches, but I've picked and choose people who I've worked with, and kind of through trial and error at times, but I feel like I'm at a point where I'm really confident in the team that I'm with. And that's the reason why I have a lot of success, because I can't do it on my own. Like I always tell Jim, I'd either overtrain myself and train into the ground, or I would not really get off the couch. And I was even thinking about that the other day on the bike when I was texting you afterwards. Like I finished it. I was like five reps into, these 9-minute intervals. I had 5 more to go. And I'm like, if I was coaching myself and didn't have somebody out here with me, didn't have to like report back to Jim, I'm like, I probably would just go home right now, because this isn't exactly fun at this moment. But yeah, got it done.
Very true. Very true.
Okay. I'm just going to pick a few from here. People writing in. So we had Scott on before you, where he did a discussion on where sports science fails. So we have a fellow asking, what is an expected race day event, issue, or circumstance that you fold into your training?
I think overall, the way that I practice this is we don't always do something that's very specific. I know like Michael Phelps's coach would purposely mess with him before his races, like snap his goggles, tell the hotel, like, don't give him his meal that he always has, like make sure it's unavailable. But I always feel like a calm mind is a fast mind, and I am ready for anything and everything to go wrong. Like in my Indian Wells race, I had my whole bottle cage just, snapped and fell off my bike. And I got a 30-second penalty for it when I was tucked into the group. We were going 30 miles an hour, and I had to stop for 30 seconds and then try and get myself back in the race, and honestly salvaged that race overall. And it was just refocusing in my mind on, what can I do right now? And having that solution focused mindset over, that problem focused mindset. So that I think can kind of encompass a lot of things, as opposed to, just train for the demands of the race. And then mentally, if you're prepared, you can kind of handle anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
go
ahead, Jim.
Sorry. There's a great book on that called The Comeback Quotient by a guy named Matt Fitzgerald. That's really, really good. I love that
plug.
Book.
I mean, I like Steve and Brad Stolberg a lot. They have Peak Performance. They have Brad has a book that I'm reading right now. It's called it's about change. I forget the title of the book. But if you follow them even on Instagram, they have really good kind of suggestions on how to handle not just racing changes and stuff like that, but just life in general even. And it's a really good kind of mental practice to follow along with if you don't have the opportunity even to work with a mental coach or a sports psychologist or anything like that. They're pretty open with their information, and they have a really good philosophy.
Awesome. Cool. We'll go for maybe one or two more. One more. You guys talk a lot about how you feel. Do you have any regular tests or assessments to affirm these feelings?
Well, so I have kind of a little bit different approach. We talked about this, I know, at our coaches conference that we had in St. George this past weekend, where we talked about testing. And I'm not really big on testing. I feel more like if you're progressing the workouts, every workout is almost a test. And I mean, so Ben knows, like, okay, when he comes into a workout, the workout should go well. And if it doesn't, that's a problem, and we reassess. So, I think if you're looking to progress workouts, when I say progress, it's like an athlete may think, well, I need to go to the track and I got to do 12 400s. Well, start with 4, then move to 6, then move to 8, then move to 10, then move to 12. And so with those progressions, and you can apply that to 70.3 training, everything. And I think Ben's just done a really good job of seeing those progressions, committing to that, and seeing the results to where he shows up to the line confident and knowing that he's prepared, because he's just stacked all of these successes over and over and over for months and months. And so to me, that's the most important thing, rather than any sort of singular test.
And I think if we're talking about like feelings, like how you might feel in a race or a workout or anything, like on a day-to-day basis, like I've been doing this a long time now, where I kind of know when my body is on the edge. And sometimes I'm cursing Jim as I'm out there because he's right, and I needed to just go start the workout. And halfway through, I'm like, how did you know that's exactly what I needed? And then other times, like, I'm most of the way through and I know the objectives of the workout. A lot of times we talk about, like, if there's a key workout and, I'm not getting the quality I need. And if we ration it down, even sometimes I thankfully have a relationship with Jim where I can text him in the middle of the workout and he's pretty quick to respond at times, so we can adjust on the fly. But I've also gotten good too, where if I know the objectives and know I'm not even close to hitting them, my body is drained, like, I have the, kind of authority to also call the workout and be like, we're not hitting what we need to hit. We need to take some rest and then go on. So I guess the point of it too is, don't judge maybe how you feel at the beginning of the workout or before you start, or even toward the middle. Keep trying to work through it, but you learn that feeling of what is like the good pain and suffering that you're supposed to feel in the workout, and what is going to be detrimental to the big picture overall. Because when it comes down to, like, if we have a workout that we need to adjust or skip, like, it's not a huge deal. We'd rather be successful. So that's where it's that fine line of having the confidence in yourself to be able to do that and know what the objectives are of the workout.
Totally. All right, we'll go for one more if that's all right. How do you allocate your training time and family time? If the training plan must skip more than 3 days, how do you manage the training plan to ensure that fitness is still in place?
Yeah, this is funny because Sarah Trua, I remember her on a pro panel where somebody was asking a similar question, and she's like, honestly, we're the worst people to ask because this is our job, and we have so much more free time than most triathletes. So I'm lucky enough where I don't juggle anything else except for training, recovery, and family time. And my wife is a huge part of that in making sure that I have the time where, if I'm training for an Ironman and I have to do 30 to 35 hours in a week and I'm out on my bike for 6 hours, she's with the kids and running errands, and I'm trying to fill in the space in between. But she helps me a lot to be able to be the best that I can be. And I would say with this, I always say to people, remember that training isn't your only stress, when you are training, that's an easy, everybody loves their TSS score, but you don't have a TSS score for, managing family finances, family stuff. Like there's all sorts of different stressors that wear on you and really do affect, like mental stress does affect physical stress as well. So that's where I think it's important to find that balance and know, like 3 days of working out in the grand scheme of things is not going to make a huge deal in the big picture. And that's something I think that professionals struggle with a lot as well, is we feel like, oh, if I miss a couple days, all my fitness is gone. But it takes a lot longer than you think. If you've been relatively consistent overall, it takes a lot to lose your fitness completely. It might take a few days for you to find your rhythm and groove again as you work on those, like, just getting the feel back for everything. But overall, like, I wouldn't add stress to that. And that's just a conversation, I think, with your coach as well, because there are things that are more important than, swimming, biking, and running. And you need to make that time for family or different events. And, that's where Jim and I have a really open communication and just say, like, hey, if I have some important things, like, we might rearrange. And we were on the phone just the other day going like, hey, I have my babysitter can't stay until, past 11:15. And I don't think I can fit in 5 hours of working out before that. So where can we shift things around? And that's where, just final thought on it, is your coach lays out your plan, and that's for your best case scenario. Like if everything 100% goes well, and it most undoubtedly will not go 100% according to plan, but that doesn't mean that it's the wrong plan for you. So it's just adjusting on the fly and adjusting that plan that is kind of the art of it as you go through it. And I think that's just important to keep in mind, like, as you go. Like, final example is I read Jim's on Monday that I had an hour easy run or an hour easy ride into a 30-minute easy run, when I really had a 90-minute run that I was supposed to do. And I texted him afterwards. I'm like, why am I not green on Training Peaks? And he's like, well, you have a 90-minute run. And I'm like, oh, did you change that? And I looked back, I'm like, nah, I'm tired. I couldn't see it. So it's not the end of the world. Like, we're still getting in a lot of training. So that's where I think having that rugged flexibility to be able to adapt to your situations is what's also going to help you when you race.
Agreed.
Jim said mic drop. No, that's great advice. All of this was great advice. I want to thank both of you for your time. I want to thank everyone that's watching for joining. This is day 1 of 3. So tomorrow we have Lauren Fleshman, and Thursday we've got Sage and Ryan Whited joining us. So come again tomorrow night and the following evening. But thank you again, Ben and Jim, for your time. Really appreciate it. Great insights, great advice, especially at the end there. And Ben, best of luck to you this season.
Yeah, thanks so much. I had fun.